center, this like source consciousness. And this is really powerful because Pluto transforms, it catalyzes, brings this really intense need for change, okay? And when it's at the galactic center, it's really challenging all of us to ask what that truth is and to align ourselves with it. And so putting that together with something else that's been going on, which for the US, there's this really powerful event transit happening, and it's been happening kind of this year. This is called a nodal reversal. The nodes of the moon represent the most karmic points in the chart, in anyone's chart or in a country's chart. They are basically, the south node is what's known as the dragon's tail. It's the karmic traces that we bring in, okay, that we're very attached to. And they're parts of ourselves that we need to kind of shed and give away as gifts to everyone else that we meet. Whereas the north node is a kind of karmic point of a magnetic point that is a destiny. It's asking us to kind of evolve. They're an opposite, right? The south node and the north node are an opposite points. The north node is these kinds of experiences we're supposed to digest, but they tend to be challenging because we're very attached to our south node. What's happening for the U.S. is that they're in a nodal reversal. It's in a nodal reversal, meaning that the north node in the sky, and this is going to be very important when we look at each candidate's chart, because the nodes are so karmically intense. When we look at where the north node is in the sky, which is right around the middle degrees of Aquarius, right? The south node is in the middle degrees of Leo. Now in the U.S. chart, we have that reversed. The U.S. south node is in Aquarius in the middle degrees, and the north node is in Leo. So it's saying we were built on the traces that we bring in, and the foundation of this country was built on these Aquarian ideals. And we see this because Aquarius is about freedom. It's idealistic. It's about humanitarianism. It's about kind of equality for all. This was the nature of the foundation of this country, Aquarian ideals. The planet Uranus is associated with Aquarius. Now, Uranus was discovered in 1781. This was right at the foundation of the discovery of this country, or the beginning of this country in 1776. So you put that Aquarius south node with the founding of Uranus in the sky, the discovery of Uranus. This was very significant that this country was basically founded on these Uranian principles of freedom, liberation, revolution, radical change. Everything, Uranus breaks the structures that we're accustomed to. And that's kind of opposed to what a Saturn principle is like. Saturn is about structures. It's about what's already been. It has to do with the past. It has to do with systems that are intact, governments, banking, corporations, all of these kinds of bigger structures, the law. Uranus is about individual freedom. It's Promethean. It's an urge to awaken. The U.S. was founded with this Aquarian Uranian vibe. And what's happening now is that it's coming up for this very karmic test because of this nodal reversal. How are we going to take our north node of being Leo, a leader in the world, okay, of being a creative life force, what Leo is about, okay, and not use it in a tyrannical, dictatorial form, which has been happening in the last 8 years, but in a way that implements the Aquarian ideals of universal brotherhood and sisterhood, of independence and freedom for all, of humanitarianism, and a kind of cosmic family. So that's what's happening. There's a karmic test happening for the U.S. itself right now. And with this, as I described the Uranus and Saturn kind of issue, that's the difference between the two, this is the biggest astrological event playing out in the next few years and for the last few years. there is in the sky, on the exact day of the elections, the opposition of Saturn and Uranus. This only happens once every 45 years. The last time this happened was around 1965, in the peak of the radical changes that we all know as the 60s. And so Saturn and Uranus are naturally opposed in what they represent. When they come up into the sky in opposition, this is an intense, very revolutionary and often rather violent change in society. It has to be, it's the nature, because what's happening is that Saturn wants to stay the same. It wants to be, it's conservative, it's afraid of change. In our birth chart, Saturn represents fear. It's a place where we have to go in with a kind of hard work ethic, a discipline, a responsibility. And the Saturn forces in life and in society have to do with that. They're, like I said, law, governance, authority. It's very obvious that in the election, a force like John McCain represents Saturn. He's older, which is a Saturn principle. He has this kind of connection with, a lot of people within Washington, D.C. He's connected with kind of being a leader in war, and so there's a kind of deep Saturn principle, and it's the conservative principle. You could definitely say that in this election, Obama represents this Uranus principle of change, and a kind of like equality for all. He also has this kind of bipartisan rhetoric that is really spoken of, and this is really important because Uranus and the Aquarius correlation is really about that. It's not about black and white, us versus them. The Uranian Aquarian principle is about kind of, we're all in this together, we're all one, we can be different, we can be as different, but we have a shared goal, right? Saturn doesn't necessarily perceive it that way. There are certain rules, there are certain principles that kind of seemingly have worked through time, or just have been there for time. And so, because they've been there, that's the value in the Saturn kind of mindset. So, what's so powerful is that exact on this day of the elections is this Saturn-Uranus opposition. From some other astrologers I've studied, this has never happened before, on an election day. And what this really creates is a deep split, because these, like I said, these energies are so opposed by their nature, and then an opposition obviously creates this tension, and it really creates like a paradigm of new change, of innovation, of, yes, uncertainty. That's what Uranus brings. We don't really know. But with Saturn, it's like, we know, it's kind of the same. Now this is happening over the whole world. But what makes this really, really extra potent is that it brings up all of the same themes from these previous Saturn-Uranus oppositions. And we really see it because this election has been so much about, we see it. We see the gender card, the race card being played. We see the age. These are all these differences represented and which harken back to the 60s, when we saw all the movements for freedom, for rights for women, for rights for African Americans and minorities. We saw the rise of Martin Luther King and more powerful women. And so these same themes come up again because we have the same planetary positions going on in the sky.